Hello and welcome to Fresh Perspectives. My name is Gail, and we are recording today's episode on the 7th of February, but it will start airing on the 14th. So I'm going to wish all of you in the viewing audience a happy Valentine's Day. You too, Michael. Have a happy Valentine's Day next Saturday. Okay, you may remember Michael. He's been on Fresh Perspectives 2 other times, and he is a new young author. He's written 3 books. The other 2 times we talked about his first one, The Penitent Affair, and the second time we talked about the sequel. Let me see, I'm not, it's not popping into my head, the title.
Confessions of Our Father.
Confessions of Our Father, oh, okay. And those were connected to each other, those other 2 books. But he also had written a book called Adventures and Adversities. It's a little book of short stories. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Thank you for appearing on Fresh Perspectives today, Michael. Before we start, because we forgot both of the other times that you were on, I want you to tell them how they can find your books.
You can find them all on Amazon.com. Just type in my full name, Michael V. Oliva, and you will see my second book and my third book. To get to my first book, you must go to the sequel, Confessions of Our Father. Click on the Penitent Affair series, and then you will find the first book. The other 2, you will find them right when you just type in my full name.
Wow, just your name.
That's the name.
Yeah, oh, okay, that's good. Okay. Okay, the first story, it's a book of short stories is what it is. And the first book is titled David Unger's Hunt for the Big Red Boar. And, well, I'm going to let you kind of summarize the story.
To summarize it in one sentence, it is a story about courage in a difficult situation. So whenever the reader or anyone, for that matter, is faced with a difficult situation, the prescription, so to speak, is courage to face the problem or situation head on and to solve it as best as they can, and for whichever way. And in this case, it's the story is about a 17-year-old boy who lives with his father. His mother is since passed. His father is unable to hunt because of his war injuries during the Great War. And this takes place in 1935, in the autumn of 1935. And out in the forest, he sees while deer hunting, he finds this enormous red boar, which normally wild boar...
Well, he was actually deer hunting when he found the boar, right? Okay.
And then that same boar, this one boar hunts and kills the very same stag that he was hunting. And when he encounters this, he sees that, wait, this boar is not normal. So instead of a brownish fur coat that most boar have, this one was burgundy red, and the eyes were not brown greenish; they were yellow. So they weren't even the eyes of a wild boar. They were more or less the eyes of a monster, almost, really. And so,
are there wild boars that have reddish fur?
There are. They're more of a what we would call a calico or like a pictish. So they would have like little bits of red, little bits of black, a little bits of yellow or for green, things like that. But it wouldn't be one large red coat. Normally it's not. Though, can it happen? Yes, absolutely. But normally, what we see for those is it's sort of a mutation with what boars have, but it would be more in patches rather than
The
an
whole
actual
boar.
whole coat.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. So you've looked into this
Yes.
so that you can know that this would be something that could actually exist. Okay. So he had to go hunting so that they would have meat to eat. And yeah, there were some strange things. For one thing, when he first saw the boar the first time, he got so scared he dropped his father's rifle, didn't he?
And just froze.
Yeah.
Well, because I mean, when you're out in the forest, when you see something you've never seen before, or and not even just hunting, just any situation, when you see something that's normally not normal or not an everyday thing, the natural instinct is to freeze and stop, really, and to not move. And so, for what David did was just what any of us would have done, really. When you see when you see a monster, like really the natural instinct is to freeze, whether you want to or not. And so then when the boar sees David, he goes into a defensive position, but then the boar sees David that he's frozen, he's not going to move. And so then he just runs off, he just continues with his evening, goes off and runs with the rest of the stag and goes off to have the rest of his supper. And then David comes back and tells his father, hey, Papa, I saw something out in the forest. And his father asked, what was it? And he said, it was a big red boar. And he goes, wow, okay. And then what his father said was, you have to face it. So is what he said to do.
Well, sometimes you have to do something you're afraid to do. And he did have to go back because he realized that it was not a good thing that he did to drop the gun and leave it there. So he at least had to go back and retrieve it. Otherwise, his father would have been really upset and he wouldn't have had anything to hunt with. So, you have what you call takeaways at the end of each of the short stories. Is there anything you want to say about the takeaway?
The first one is, be courageous when you are faced with a difficult situation, and
it's dangerous.
Yes, because sometimes difficult can mean dangerous, and for sometimes it could be just anything, really. And like, for example, if one is in huge amount of debt, really, you have two options in that case. You either run away from it, but then again, it's still going to be there, though. The debt's still going to be there no matter what. Or if you face it head on and try to do anything you can to pay off that debt. Or if one is in a car accident, and then what do they do if they don't have another car? They either have to fix the car they have, or two, they have to get another car. So either way, you have to show some courage and initiative.
Yeah, there were a lot of people several years back, not a huge amount of years, but several years back, where right shortly before Easter there was a big hailstorm and the roofs of a lot of people's cars got damaged. So if repairing the car was cost more than what the car would be worth according to its age, the insurance company wouldn't pay for the repair work. So there were a lot of people having a lot of problems that way. Well, your second book in Adventures and Adversities is my favorite of all the ones in the book. Is it your own favorite too?
It's one of them, though. And also, I must say this too, that with the exception of the very first story and the very last story, all the stories I wrote when I was in high school or college, actually.
Oh, did you
so
really?
These stories are actually some of my earliest written stories.
So you
actually.
must have had somewhat of an interest then in writing.
Absolutely.
At that time then. Okay. The second story is called The King and the Carpenter. And would you like to tell us who the king was?
King Henry III of England.
And how old was he when he became
9 years old.
in 1216? That was a lot of years ago.
Yep, sure was.
Okay.
And he reigned for 56 years.
56 years.
He is the third longest reigning reigning monarch in English history after Queen Elizabeth II and Queen Victoria. So he is...
Oh, okay. So, this is kind of a little bit based, in fact?
Very much based in history. And this story itself is... what I will say is it could have happened. King Henry III was very approachable compared to many, many other monarchs. So he would go out and talk to common people, and because he wrote in many of his writings is that in the eyes of God we are all equal, king or prince or pauper. Is what he would say. So, and he would go out, and in this story, it's in late October, 1237. He's out. He's in his office late at night, and he can't sleep.
And he was married.
Yes, he was.
He was married to his second wife.
He was, yes.
Did his first wife die?
She did, yes.
Okay.
He had 9 children with his first wife, and I believe he had another 7 with his second wife.
Oh my God!
And so
16 children.
Yep. Well, like the old saying is, it's good to be king. Too. So, but
okay. So one night he was not able to sleep, and he started walking around in the castle until he met up with one of the guards because he was looking. He wanted somebody to talk to. So he started talking to a guard and suggested that they do what?
Ride out into town amongst the people.
In the middle of the night,
in the middle of the night,
looking for somebody to talk to. Wow, that could be a trick, kind of finding somebody that late at night. Okay, and who did they find? Who did they find and decide to talk to?
They went out. They went into the castle stables. They got 2 horses, and they rode out, trotted into town, and. The people that were awake, there were a few taverns and pubs that would stay up late at that hour, but not many. And the ones they did see, for the ones that were awake, they were astonished to see wait, Your Majesty, you're up at this hour? And he goes, well, it's dangerous for you to be up at this hour. But then they go into this one side street, and they find this one carpenter, an elderly carpenter in his 60s, working on a pole for a ladder for another man in the village.
Oh, he was making a ladder for somebody else.
He was making a pole.
Else.
Yep, and he was making a pole for a ladder.
Okay.
And then they say, King Henry, he signaled to William, hey, let's talk to him. Let's see what he has to say. And then so William, he addressed the carpenter, and the carpenter ignored William, actually. And then so, of course, William, of course, wanting to protect the king and protect, to command respect, and he got off his horse and then kind of pushed Joseph, a little bit on his shoulder, and he goes, "You insolent swine, you answer to the king." And then King Henry says, "William, that's enough. He's an elderly man. He must not have heard me." And then so, then And then he greeted the carpenter, and then he asked, can we please speak with you? And then the carpenter's name is Joseph. And so, and then he said, Your Majesty, why do you want to talk to me? He goes, well, I mean, it wasn't really apparent to him that that the king was bored, or but basically what the king really wanted subconsciously was he wanted counsel, he wanted wisdom from elders. Really, because even though King Henry was king for 21 years at that point, he was still only in his
21.
For 21 years. So yeah, he was 30 years old. So I mean. And so he's still relatively young, even at that time. That's still relatively young. And so then the king got off his horse, and then he found this one large tree stump, this one log, and then he just maneuvered it, and then so he can speak mano y mano to Joseph, and then he goes, why are you here? He goes. I want to speak with you. If you have words that your wisdom is like he's attracted to his wisdom and everything. And then, Joseph, he says, I'm sorry, the king asks, what are you doing at this hour? Why are you working? Why aren't you asleep? And it was the king's response when Joseph asked, why are you up at this hour? And then king asked, well, why are you up? Then Joseph says, I have to do what I must, and you, your majesty, can do as you wish. And of course, the King Henry, though, he was mildly offended by this, and he goes, no, I mean, I am king, but there's a lot of things I must do. I have to protect the realm from invasion. I have to collect taxes. I have to, govern the nobles well. I have to make treaties, provide an heir. There's many things I must do. But then Joseph said, yes, you're right, but you still get to do them as you please. And then that starts the conversation more and more. And then finally, what King Henry does is he brings Joseph to his court as a counselor, actually as an advisor. And so then he ordered William for him to come back with the king to the castle, and then they're going to bring a group of couriers to bring Joseph and his belongings to the castle itself, and then to court. Joseph is given new clothes. He's given a salary from the king's purse, and then he's given his own room. And Joseph must have felt like he basically won the lottery, really. but at the same time, though, at the very same time, he's wondering, why is he there? Too, because he's just a carpenter. He's 63 years old, and then now he's part of the king's council. Too. Yeah. So for what a mighty rise, too.
Yeah, I know. I know.
And then what King Henry does is that he keeps Joseph with him, and he would summon Joseph for advice or for counsel every so often. And then finally in 1240, this was 3 years after his appointment, and then he wonders about this one new French knight that just arrived in the country. His name was Simon de Montfort, and he's like basically a rock star at this point. Simon, that is, newly knight. He's a tournament winner, a great French noble, very well connected. And he says, what do you think about this new knight, this new noble, Simon de Montfort, the Baron, this one Baron? He goes. He thought a sec, and he goes, get rid of him. He said, he will rise against you in years to come, and you may or may not survive the throne. And then what King Henry does is he tries to make sense of what Joseph's advice was, but also at the same time, King Henry felt that no, I can keep him and everything. But then later on, though, Joseph passes away of natural causes.
Right.
But given, though, his class, because in England, at that time, if you were born a peasant, you died as a peasant, meaning he was buried in a communal grave, basically, with either a very small headstone or no headstone at all. But then later on, though, many years later, in 1267, Simon de Montfort launches a rebellion against King Henry and his son, too, Edward I, who Edward I would later on become Longshanks, as he's known as. But then it's called the Second Barons' War. It lasted about 3 years or so, and then at first Simon de Montfort did win the first half of the war, and they installed a parliament for a very, very short time, but then King Henry was later on to reclaim the throne and to take back control. And so...
Okay. And what is the lesson you want people to learn from this story?
Respect everyone, no matter who they are.
Oh, good.
Respect everyone.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
no matter what, if they are prince or pauper, or if just the rock star or the unknown, you respect everyone, because in the eyes of God, every single one of us is equal in the eyes of God, meaning that all of us are to be given the same amount of respect as we would give anyone else or to ourselves.
Oh yeah, and you can find out about the equality of all people by visiting cemeteries. Go around and see. Well, this is how we're all going to end up. And it feels good to do nice things for other people. He gave Joseph the carpenter a really nice life. The rest of his life, he was able to live comfort.
Absolutely. And then also at the same time too, he was able to eat well too. Back then, health was wealth. And not so much, material wealth. It was a good diet was as important as living 100 years.
Okay.
At that time.
Now, the next story, the third one, is called To Tsavo and Kilimanjaro. And this is about a man named John Andrew Robinson, who was an adventure junkie. Tell us about Andrew.
Oh, John Andrew. Oh, yes. So he is definitely one that all of us have the adventure part in us, whether we know it or not, whether we feel it or not. And so for him, it was front and center his entire life. He got it from his father, Andrew Robinson, who was a career soldier in the British Army. His father was a Crimean War veteran. And then he was one of 5 children, and then later on, once he was old enough, and when he was 18, he joined the British Army, and then they sent him to India, and he just thought, oh wow, alrighty, so he gets to go to India, exotic place, what could be better, right? But then he goes to India, he serves his 3 years, and then he comes back with his unit for the Diamond Jubilee for Queen Victoria, and he just felt something, not so much missing, but something not fulfilled, but he felt unfulfilled. Is that, okay, 3 years in India, he's 21 years old now, he feels he's a full-grown man, but now what next? Now he wants to do something else now. He wants to do something better, or either become something or to do something. Mostly for him, it's all about the doing for him. And so then he gets leave from the British Army for a while. He becomes a foreman in a factory for a little bit. He gets married. He has 2 children by that point. And then later on, the Boer War breaks out. And then he says, "Oh, hey, great, okay." So
more adventure.
Yes. So he gets he's in the reserves, is a reservist, and then he gets called back up. He's promoted to color sergeant, and then he goes off and fights in the Boer War. But then the Boer War doesn't last very, very long. It only lasts around 2 years or so, or 2.5 years. And then he writes to his wife and goes, okay, well, war is over and I'm still yet unfulfilled. So what he writes to his wife is, he says, I'm going to stay in Africa for a while just to see, if he can do something. And then what he decides is he's going to go big game hunting too, because he read about John Patterson, who is also a colonel in the British Army too. He was a bridge builder, he was an engineer, and he read his book about the Tsavo man-eaters, which were these two enormous lions that he ended up hunting and killing. And so he just thought, well, maybe I'll go on a big game hunt for two. He finds a financier who is Henry Michael Rathbone, the Baron of Gosworth, and he finds this one American emigrant from America, but he moved to South Africa to work in the diamond mines. So he wanted to become a diamond prospector, and then he agreed to go with John too. They become very fast friends. Henry Michael Rathbone, he goes with them too, as well, and all three go on this wonderful trip to Tsavo. But then before they do, they go stop at Kilimanjaro too. They don't go up the mountain though, but they do visit the mountain as well, and they see all the African plains, the savannas, and then they just look around and go, wow, this is wonderful, this is amazing, and then they go off on their way to Tsavo, which is in modern day Kenya, present day. And then so they go there, they go on this 3-game hunt, they bag a few game animals, and then after that they pretty much part ways. And then Henry Rathbone, he wants John to work on his work for him as a game warden, too, as a gamekeeper. But then he just said, no, that's too solitary, that's too sedentary. I want to be free to move. And so then later on, all three part ways. John goes back to England, and then. Edwin Johnson Rigg, the American, he goes back to America, moves to Sonoma, California, and becomes a sheriff out there. And then Henry Michael Rathbone, he, of course, is this huge landowner and barrister, which is a lawyer, too, in England. And then later on, then John Heave, he gets his big adventure with the Great War. Too.
World War I.
Yeah, World War I, yes. And also his two oldest sons also serve in the war too. But for John, he was a war correspondent though, because at that point he was actually too old to actually serve as an infantryman. But his two oldest sons, who are actually 18 and 16 actually, they've both served in the war as well. They don't serve together, but they do serve in the war. And then not really much was said after that, really, and the story just kind of ends there. But the big takeaway from this story is, if you're going to do something, like if you're going to go on adventures, make sure you do it while you're young, because when you're young, you're able, you're fit, and also it'll help shape your worldview of things. Because when you travel, you learn so much about the world and about all of us as human beings.
Okay, I would like to add a little more advice to
yes,
that.
Go ahead. Yes, absolutely.
If you're going to get married, it's not a good idea to go and leave your wife and kids for years at a time. I think if you're going to be doing that after, either wait to look for a person to get married to, or else have it be to where you have your adventures, where you can take your family so they can live there also. Because, it sounds like he was going off and leaving his wife and kids and to fend for themselves.
But he eventually returned, and then they had he and his wife had 3 more children as well. But also at the same time too, he also felt if he summoned his wife and kids, while big game hunting, something could have happened to them as well on the trip, i.e., being attacked by any of the animals there, and so he didn't want he didn't want to jeopardize their safety, and so but he did vow that he was going to return, and he did. But no, I absolutely agree with that too. When you have a family, bring them too. Just kind of stay away from the dangerous animals too.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. The next one, which was the fourth story, is, and the last full-length one, is Up from Way Down Under, about a Carl Richard Montgomery who went by the nickname of Monty and was born in Sydney, Australia. So I guess you could tell us something about Carl Richard Monty Montgomery.
All right. So his two parents were, his father was a World War I veteran and who had numerous war injuries, primarily on his left arm. He did have injuries on both his legs, but they didn't completely heal, but they did heal. His left arm never fully healed completely, so he could use his arm, but had very little use of it. Though for his father, and his father was only 19 years old when Monty was born. So, and he and his mates lied about their ages in order to join the war. And so, and for most of the Australian soldiers during World War I, they were stationed at either in the Middle East, primarily Mesopotamia and Palestine, but also they went to Gallipoli, which is the main. That's the one where they're most famous for, at least for the Australian contribution, and New Zealand troops as well. And so that didn't last very, very long, and then he was wounded. So his father, Richard Montgomery, was wounded in Gallipoli. That's where he got his injuries from. He went to Palestine. He was wounded again there, and then finally he was sent back to Australia to recover. And his legs healed. His left arm did not completely. He met his future wife, and a woman called Elizabeth Schuster, who was a German immigrant, along with her parents, were recent immigrants to Australia. They changed their name to Schussby in order to combat, over the anti-German sentiments that were there in Australia at the time. So, she was very, very shy. Her thick accent, of course, was what she felt was a hindrance, but that was of was not an issue at all to Richard at all. They met at a dance. They met. They fell in love. They got married. And then they had their only child too, which was, of course, Carl Richard, which later on he was named Monty. And he had a sort of less than ideal upbringing, but yet also it was much better upbringing than it was for many, many other Australians at the time. And then he went to many private schools at the time. He went to Anglican grammar schools, and then finally he went to a military school at the behest of his grandparents. His father wasn't in his life very, very much because he was looking for work and looking for being a disabled veteran in the middle of a Great Depression. Looking for work, that is not easy to do. So, and needless to say, he had very, very trouble finding work. He had trouble keeping work, and so Monty's father was not around very, very much. And then after his nursing phase, he lived with his grandparents mainly because his mother worked for a wealthy English family who lived in Sydney. And then later on, he went to military school. And then after that, the Second World War broke out, and then that sent him on.
Okay. Let's see. There was some drama that went on. There was a friend named Archie.
Yes.
And I think there was something after World War II. where there was a section of the story called Vendetta and
Oh, yes,
War,
yeah.
and there was also a section called The Final Fight. Would you like to say anything
yes.
about those?
So what happened with that was after the Second World War, both Monty and Archie met during the war, and they became very, very fast friends. And they've kept their friendship all throughout the rest of their lives. And they didn't know what they wanted to do after the war. So, because after the war, the future was kind of uncertain for really. So then they just became what they call drovers, which are basically sort of cowboys, but they would drive cattle from the cattle stations to the stockyards and to the meat markets, whether that be in Brisbane or Adelaide, which is in South Australia, or to Brisbane, which is on the eastern coast. And so they would do that. They loved it at first. They were drovers for the largest cattle company in Australia, which is the Pettigrew Cattle Company. And they, of course, had vast powers. Too. They didn't really control the governments, though, but they had enormous influence. And eventually, the company started to wither away their autonomy at first, and that made them very disillusioned with the company. And they signed 7-year contracts after the war. And finally, 5 years into for them, they had 2.5 years left. They wanted out of their contracts. And so they went to the company headquarters to finally hopefully terminate their contracts. But the company's general manager, a man named Thomas Anderson, but he was known as Devil Ants because of the reason he got that name is because of his temper and because of his treatment of the Aboriginal workers. So the Aboriginal peoples called him that himself. And then Devil Ants, Mr. Anderson just said, nope, you guys are here for 2.5 more years, finish your contracts, then you're done. But Monty and Archie just said, no way, we want out, please, if they had to buy their way out, then they would have. But then finally Devil Ants said, hey, Archie, can you please leave? I want to talk to Monty in private. And so if that happened, then he goes, and then Anderson made Monty an offer of if he would cut off, if he would stop his friendship with Archie, he would get a promotion in the company. He would terminate his current contract and promote him in the company. And Monty just said no way. He just thought of it as just a barefaced bribe, and it wouldn't have led anywhere good. So then, and instead of, there really wasn't any legal way for them to peacefully do this through the court. They couldn't do it through the courts because they both knew the company owned the courts, so they couldn't do anything. So then the only way they had to do this was to actually, unfortunately, fight too. And long story short, there were deaths in this whole thing, both Aboriginals and then some of their own friends, to friends and allies too as well. And the long story short is that there was a firefight in this ghost town called Elizabeth. Elizabeth is a real town. It's a real ghost town in Australia. It's in South Australia. It's about 1.5 hours northeast of Adelaide. Too, and you can still visit there too as well. There's it's sort of like a western town, like in Nevada or California, and there's remnants of it still there. And needless to say, there was one last firefight. Devil Ants was killed there by Archie, and then there were 3 men. It was Monty, Archie, and Crazy Joe, who was an American as well. They all got jailed and locked up. And then finally, long story short, there was so much anti-sentiment against the Pettigrew Cattle Company that basically once, because after the fight it went into the courts finally, and then there was testimonies with the Aboriginals, and then also with Lee Wong, who was also a witness to for the company practices, and then finally once that happened, then that was it. Then for Pettigrew Company became no more, and then finally the three men were pardoned by the Australian Prime Minister in 1951. And so then they were freed, and then they went off to have their own businesses, and they lived out the rest of their lives. They got married, and then they had children as well.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it was a pretty interesting story. My favorite is still the one about King Henry.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites as well.
Okay, so we get to the end of your book, and the world's, there's something called the world's shortest flash fiction romantic short story. Do you want to recite the short story?
One single, now married, expecting.
And the takeaway, that's the whole story there, yep. Okay, and then you have something that you say at the takeaway from that.
It's don't ever give up. And that I firmly believe that there is always, there is someone for everyone. Just be calm, be patient, never give up, keep going, and you will find that one, your one and only, but you have to keep going and keep trying.
The way you have it worded here in the book is, don't worry, the love of your life is out there. They will come soon or late. Be patient and never ever give up. Okay, so that's kind of nice.
Also, I do have something to say about that, and I wrote that story in a way to outdo Hemingway, actually. Outdo Ernest Hemingway, because he wrote a flash fiction story that was 6 words, and I can tell it to you right now. It's for sale, baby shoes never worn. So
for sale, baby shoes never worn. Wow.
And that was printed in a newspaper that he did, because one literary critic bet him that he could never write a story that was less than 10 words. Well, he did it in 6, is what he did. So I just think, you know what? If Hemingway did it in 6, I want to write a flash fiction story in 5. I want a whole story where there is a challenge, an overcoming, and a happy ending, unlike his. And so I did. And believe it or not, that one was. I wrote that the year before the book was published, and I finally got it done the very same year it was published. So, and then I finally had it. It was one single. That's that was the challenge. Now married, that's the overcoming, and then expecting, that's the happy ending. There's 3 characters in that story.
Well, you know, speaking of short stories, I've been wondering if you ever had the idea or might want to try to see if you can get a job doing writing short stories for a magazine.
I'm currently exploring that realm as well, and also for other magazines too.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, there's one that my husband has subscribed to for quite a number of years called The Sun magazine. I don't imagine you've heard of it.
S-U-N or S-O-N?
S-U-N.
I believe I have heard of it, yes.
But you've never actually seen a copy
I've seen
of it.
one or 2 copies of it throughout the years, but I've just never opened up and read one, no.
Yeah, I think you might like it, and I think that probably the kind of stories you write would fit right in with the kind of short stories that people write for. That you should look into it.
I will be glad to.
Yeah,
I will.
yeah, and let me think. I was thinking also. Have you thought about maybe getting a weekly or a monthly column in like a newspaper or anything?
I will be exploring that, but with what I'm planning right now is another book of short stories, and also even a book of novellas, which are short novels. Really, they're anywhere between 25 to 75 pages each for yourself.
Okay.
There's one, like for example, with current projects I have working, is one story about St. Peter, too, where he goes into, it takes place during the Great Fire of Rome, which was on July 18th, 64 AD. So, and then he, along with so many others, flee the city to escape the fire. And then inadvertently he goes into this one dark alley that seems very cool, like cool in temperature, that is, compared to the rest of the streets, which are literally going up in flames. And in so doing, he actually goes into a wormhole, actually, which wormholes they're not confirmed to be not scientifically confirmed to exist, but many people believe that they do indeed exist. And so what happens, he goes into this wormhole and he comes out in modern day Rome. And then he sees all of modern day Rome in the year 2018. And so he sees all the cars, all the buildings, and is just, of course, mightily awestruck by all this. And then Jesus encounters for him as well, and he takes him on a tour of the Vatican at night, that is. And then he shows basically the future of the church and future of Christianity, and with his contribution, what Peter's contribution was. And then in so doing, he sees the glory of the church and of the religion, and then he goes back to 64 AD, and then he, of course, with Peter, though, he gets called an enemy of the state by Nero, of course, because after the Great Fire of Rome, Emperor Nero blamed the Christians for the Great Fire of Rome, and so then that starts the persecution of the Christians that would last all the way until 313 AD. Peter's crucified upside down, actually in what's now the Vatican, on Vatican Hill. That's why it's called that. It's called because it was Vatican Hill at the time. And so that's one story that I'm working on, and then there's just other short stories too as well. Plus, there's the fourth novel as well. But I don't want to tell that much yet. I'll just wait till that comes out.
Oh, okay. You're not going to tell the story.
No, but I'll tell you, for the fourth novel, it's very different to what I have written before. So,
okay.
And if it is a vampire, but I will say this: it's a vampire novel, but yet it reads much more like The Great Gatsby than Dracula. So it's going to be mightily different than from my previous works. But I'm just going to leave it at that and just wait for people to read it once it comes out.
Oh, okay. Have you started writing it
Yes,
yet?
absolutely, yes.
Oh, you have?
I have, currently I have, let's see, I have one half of the book written in the two separate sections. I have the beginning of the novel and the very end of the novel written. It's just the middle parts that I have to finish. And once they're finished, it'll get published somewhere, and then people will get to read it and enjoy it. And believe me, if people have enjoyed reading the first and third books, they're gonna really enjoy this one too.
Oh, that's good.
They're really gonna enjoy the fourth book.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad to hear it. I was just thinking it might actually be simpler to do like short stories and things.
With short stories, the process is a little different than writing novels. With a short story, you have to know what you're doing from start to finish, and with where everything needs to go. So the writing is the same, but the process, like the mental process, is a little different for Velf. Not to say that it's harder, which that's not the case, but just the mental process of like, but you have to know what you're doing for a short story. With a novel, you can tweak it, you can make changes as you go. But with a short story, you don't have that level of forgiveness. Really, you have to know what you're doing. And and of course, with a flash fiction, you have to really know what you're doing, what you want to say. So, especially if it's less than 10 words.
Yeah, in a way, it seems like what they call a haiku, sort of a really short poem. You know, that's just like maybe 3 lines long.
Or a quatrain, as what Nostradamus would use, which was, you know, like only 4 lines is what he would use. And also, the funniest thing for the last one is that the title of the story is longer than the actual story.
Yes.
Too, so.
Yes. It kind of makes me think of something that I saw on television once upon a time, quite a few years ago, where they they were making these 5-minute long movies. You know, one of them that was pretty funny, I remember, was this woman married some man who had a cat, and the cat did not like the new wife.
Oh.
And so the cat, they were throwing a big party. The wife was throwing, and her husband were throwing a big party, and the cat was trying to figure out how to get him to divorce the new wife. And they were throwing this big party, and they were going to be serving something called salmon mousse, if I'm remembering correctly. And the cat figured out a way to cause it to have food poisoning. And so everybody at the party got sick. And when they started throwing up and everything, the woman had been taken her wedding ring off while she'd been preparing food for the party in the kitchen, and it was sitting on the kitchen counter next to the sink. And when it reached the point where everybody was getting sick because the cat had poisoned the food, the cat knocked the wedding ring into the sink and down the drain, and that was the end of the 5-minute movie. A little earlier in the movie, you could hear the wife's voice. You never actually see the husband and wife, I don't think, in it, but earlier in this short little 5-minute movie, you hear her voice asking the husband if he'd seen her silk scarf that she'd been planning on wearing for the party, but it was missing. And then it shows the cat dragging the scarf through the living room, taking it to dispose of it or something, you know. So the cat really sabotaged everything, but it was pretty funny.
It was like Home Alone cat.
Yeah. So anyways, you know, you knew that was going to be the end of everything. I can't remember what the cat did to make the cause the food to make
Oh,
everything
simple.
easy?
It just use its paw. Just use its
Oh,
paw.
after using the litter
Oh, it could have been
box?
anything. Yeah, or just that. Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So, the cat could have just licked the salmon mousse too.
Could have been.
Mhm.
Could have been. Yeah, I'm sure that cats carry diseases that
Mhm.
people can catch.
Mhm. But I would say with how the cat would to poison the food, yeah, all they had to do was just nab at it with their paw.
Yeah, because the cats use their paws.
For everything. Yeah.
Yeah, for everything.
It's not like they can wash their paws and clean them. It's not like they can.
So, anyways, that was pretty funny. Well, okay, so your purpose for writing this book of short stories was to show problems that people can have.
And it could be any number of things, and especially for teenagers, young adults, their hormones are in overdrive. They're growing as people. They're turning into adults. They're going to want to do things. They're going to want to, and they're also going to be facing many challenges and situations. And for this first book, and I'll just say that this first book of short stories addresses a few of them. Not going to be all of them, because that would be one very, very big book of short stories. But I am going to be coming out with more adventures and adversities in the future, addressing more challenges, and also in more situations that people can both will either be facing, have faced, or have overcome, or will overcome, too. And it's also to encourage them, to encourage the readers. It's also to inspire, if I can, to motivate, and also at the same time, too, life is not guaranteed, as my mother would say. So you better be thankful for today and yesterday, because you don't know if tomorrow's coming. And so, and it's all about just getting people to explore themselves, to look to look at the world and just say, yeah, I'm going to explore this place. So it's basically to be courageous, be curious, be respectful, and do not give up. So, and that's the essence of this book.
Yeah.
Here.
Try to encourage people to be the best they can be,
Yes.
and do the best that they're capable of. Yeah.
I mean, as Martin Luther King says, if you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, crawl. If you can't crawl, roll. But by all means, keep moving.
Yeah. Well, we've come to the end of another episode of Fresh Perspectives, and I want to say thank you again for appearing on Fresh Perspectives, and we'll have to get you back on when you get some more writing finished. And I'll see those of you in the viewing audience when I do the next episode.
Thank you so
Oh,
much.
you're welcome.